Yeah. Yeah. Especially sa mga lugar na wala silang computer, wala silang kuryente, wala silang projector. Pero how about the places na wala silang whiteboard or pisara? Yeah, so what we actually often do, kuha lang kami ng manipis na plywood, hatiin namin, pinturahan lang ng pangpisara, dala-dala namin sa bundok. Pero pag lagi-lagi, mabigat din. So, ito yung ginawa ko last December, na para sa 4 field. So, yun yung empty field, yun yung seeded field, yung gospel seed sowing, yun yung tumutubo. And what does this represent? Ano ang ginagawa? What are we doing in this field? Nurturing discipleship through using, baka sinabi nyo, hindi ko lang marinig, inductive Bible study, or DBS. Yep. And then this is the harvest field, binding off. And that is, in the center, that is Kewa. Did anybody watch Castaway? Yung volleyball na naging kaibigan niya? Yeah. So that's your leader, that's your developing. There in the middle. Kewa. So there's all 4 fields. Yep. So, whatever you have available, use it. Hindi kailangan necessarily gamitin ang kahit pisara. So this morning I will let you see some of my notes. Just a couple more things here in culture and worldview. High context and low context cultures. Actually, let's start with low context cultures. Low context cultures. Ito ang mga kultura kung saan hindi lumaki ang mga tao magkakasama. Didn't grow up together. In low context cultures, people typically move, palipat-lipat. They'll move from one job to another job, from one city to another city. Sometimes mula sa isang bansa sa ibang bansa naman. So the people around them are people that they have maybe only known a few days, a few weeks, a few months, or at the most, a few years. And they're from iba't ibang kultura, iba't ibang karanasan. Okay? In low context cultures, there's not very much context that's common. Kaya nga tinatawag low. Yung context ng palibot nila, hindi common from the different people surrounding you. So in low context cultures, ang mga tao doon, very explicit. Sinasabi talaga ang bawat detalye ng dapat malaman mo at dapat gawin mo. Americans are high context or low context cultures? Low context cultures. It's very, very, very rare in America anymore to find somebody who's still living where they grew up. Almost no one. And Americans tend to be very much like direkta talaga sabihin lang sa iyo. Okay? Now there are other aspects of that too, but this is one of the reasons why, is because we want to be very, very clear, because there's so much misunderstanding as we move from place to place, different experiences. At ang Amerika ay hindi lang isang kultura. Halo-halo ng hundreds, if not thousands of different cultures. Communication. Not usually low context cultures hindi na-offend. Hindi madaling na-offend sa rectang communication. Talagang sabihin diretso. Little common history. Hindi sobrang idiomatic ang mga salita nila. So have any of you ever tried to read an instruction manual? Halimbawa, bumili kayo ng washing machine, tapos may kasamang manual. Did you ever try to actually read that? Yeah, no, because it's so boring. And you can figure it out on your own, right? Pero ganun ang low context cultures. Kailangan ganun ka explicit every detail. Kasi you don't have much common amongst each other. High individuality. Again, Western cultures, very much individualistic. People do not walk into other people's homes. Used to be, you could walk up and knock on the door. Ngayon, sa America or sa Europe, you have to make an appointment. And even then, malimit na hindi ka talaga papasukin sa bahay nila. If you want to meet somebody in the West, you make an appointment to go to a restaurant. Not to someone's house. Yeah. Very individualistic. Accomplishment-based. Kasi nga walang malalim or long-lasting relationships, so they measure their success, they measure their worth, their meaning by accomplishment. Kaya very important, very task-oriented ang mga low-context cultures. Malimit na may mga lists. Minsan yung iba, every day, may checklist. At na-fulfill sila kapag na-check nila, nagawa ko na, na-accomplish ko na, na-accomplish ko na, na-accomplish ko na. They are more willing to take time away, to set aside relationships in order to have more things accomplished. Okay? But, so this may sound negative to us, kasi hindi sobrang ganun tayo, although we're moving that way more and more as westernization gains in the Philippines. But there are some advantages. One advantage for ministry is madali talaga makapasok. It's super easy to enter. It's typically relatively easy visa-wise, but what we're talking about is it's easy to just move into a city and start from scratch. Because everybody else is doing the same. Lahat ay bagong dating. So hindi naman strange or weird yon versus sa mga high-context cultures. High-context cultures are the opposite. High-context, marami talagang common context ang mga tao sa palibot. Ito yung mga tao na they not only grew up together and are still in the same place they've been all their life, but also their parents, and also their grandparents, and also their great-grandparents. So everybody knows everything about everyone. Wala kang matago doon. Ito yung sabi nila yung telepono ng uway. Alam ba ninyo yung uway? Ratan? Yung telepono ng uway, mas mabilis kaysa yung telepono na cellphone. Ibig sabihin yung gossip, yung chismis. Mabilis talaga. Grabe. Okay? Status is very, very important. Rank and face. Yung tinatawag na saving face. It's very important in high context cultures. Because you've been living together, working together. Everybody knows everything about everyone else. Okay, so it's very common in America. In America, in Adventist Friendship Missions, we're an international organization. We have more than 200 missionaries all around the world. We are connected with the GC all the way down, etc., etc., etc. Pero yung president namin, even the janitor just calls him Conrad. Okay? Walang sir, walang president, walang mister, just Conrad. Okay? And he calls me John. Walang rank, walang titles, ganon. Okay? Versus here, always my something. My sir, ma'am, pastor, teacher. I get so annoyed with my wife. Kasi teacher siya, at lahat ng mga classmate niya for the last how many years, kagagraduate niya lang, everybody is, teacher this, teacher that, teacher this, teacher that. Sabi ko, tama na yung teacher. Yeah. Pero yan ang aking low context culture. Para sa kanya, kailangan may title, kailangan may respect. Okay? Common history, common childhood, background. The language is usually very idiomatic. Anong ibig sabihin ng idiom? What is an idiom? Okay, symbolic language. It's a word or phrase that isn't the meaning that you're intending, iba naman sa actual dictionary definition ng word na yan. So can you give me some examples of idiomatic language? Anong mga idioms sa Tagalog? It's raining cats and dogs. Yes. Literally, may nahuhulog bang mga aso galing sa langit? No. Something else. Ningas kogon. Anong ibig sabihin ng ningas kogon? Okay, that's a new one to me. Good one. Sa mga mangyan, kapag may utang, sinasabi nilang may dugi. Alam ba niyo yung dugi? Tinik. May tinik. So, ang utang ay isang tinik. Yeah. It's a thorn in your flesh. You have to get it out. Yeah. High context cultures typically very, very, very idiomatic. In fact, sa mga mangyan, they're very, very high context, much higher context than Tagalog culture. And I don't know as much Visaya, but Tagalog culture is more higher context than America, but still it's getting more and more westernized. Sa mga mangyan, very, very high context, very idiomatic. In fact, especially kung meeting, if it's something delicado, something sensitive, something it can hurt, then they will talk around it using idioms. And I know the language very well. I know the language well enough. I actually teach Mangyan kids and correct them in their language. Pero when it gets to a really sensitive, delicate meeting, sa tindi ng mga at sa dami ng mga idioms nila, paikot sa topic. Usually I can't follow. Yeah, matindi talaga. Actually, has anyone heard of the language Yiddish? Yiddish language? Yiddish isn't actually a language. What happened is that the Jews in Germany in World War II, sa persecution ni Hitler, sa Holocaust, para maka-communicate yung mga Jews na hindi maintindihan ng mga Germans, gamit nila ang German language, pero Jewish idioms. They used Jewish idioms with German words, and they were able to speak German in a way that the Germans couldn't accuse them of doing anything wrong, but they were actually talking about whatever they needed to secretly talk about right in front of the Germans. That's where Yiddish came from. Yeah, so it's idioms. High context cultures are highly idiomatic. Many times their communication ay mahiksi lang, and I'll have an example of that in a minute. You just say one or two words, and everybody knows what you're talking about. Pero yung mga outsiders, totally lost. Yeah. And this is one reason you need to learn the language. A family or group or national loyalty, matindi talaga yung loyalty nila sa tribu nila, or sa bansa nila, or sa family or clan nila. Depende. Relationship-based. So sa Pilipinas, sa Amerika, pag bili ako, kung mamalingki ako, I will go to the place that has the best product at the best price. And if that changes from yesterday to tomorrow, walang problema na yesterday bumili ako kay nanay and then bukas bumili naman ako kay Alex. No problem. Pero sa Pilipinas, narinig ba ninyo yung term na suki? Yeah. So in the Philippines, even business is somehow connected to relationships. Now, it's not always a really deep, sometimes it is, sometimes yung suki talagang matalik, pero many times it's not so much a deep relationship, but it's still, talagang pag suki ko si Michael, bumabalik-balik ako pa rin kay Michael. And my reciprocation, so I give Michael my business, and he gives me the best price and the best produce. Yeah. So may ganun sa high context cultures. High context cultures are very difficult to get into. They may be difficult to access at all. By the way, this may be something for your notes. Hindi pa namin nabanggit yung mga levels of access, right? Hindi pa? Okay. So dito tayo sa field 1 ngayon. Levels of access is, first level is physical access. Okay? Physical access can be very difficult, especially sa mga katutubo. But even if you have physical access, with high context cultures, emotional access is very difficult. They have grown up with each other, parang yung magkabarkada pag high school pa tayo. It can be hard to break into a new barkada. Kasi matalik na sila, close na sila, and then just multiply that by a whole tribe. Okay, and then the third is spiritual access. High context cultures are very difficult to get into the higher levels, the deeper levels of access. Here is an example of that. Isang taon, 1 year, we came back from furlough. Sa AFM at PFM, meron kaming furlough. Sa AFM, every 3 years, balik kami sa US, fundraising ulit, reporting sa office, health checkup, etc., bago mag-relaunch ulit. Pagbalik namin galing sa furlough noon, kasi walang mga cellphone. Walang cellphone, walang Facebook, walang internet. So there's no way for us to know what happened nung wala kami doon. So every time we come back, we're always worried. Kasi nung panahon na yun, medyo wala pang healthcare sa kanila. So ang unang tanong namin, who died? And they told us, this year, Tanoy died. And to be honest, my half, oh, I'm so sorry, and half, whew. Kasi Tanoy was from the beginning, from our very first days there, even before we came there. Tanoy talaga yung kontra sa missionary, kontra to Christianity. He did everything he could to destroy us, to break us down, chismis, gossip, legal action, anything he could to try to get us away. But anyway, pero malungkot pa rin, kahit si David, kahit namatay si Saul, malungkot pa rin. He still mourned for Saul. And so we asked, so what happened? Why did Tanoy die? And their answer was, he ate dirt. Tapos na. Solved. Explained na ang lahat. So you understand, right? No? Why not? Of course. So at that point, I understood, kasi as a kid, I got into the language and culture more easily than my parents did. So we had to explain to my parents, What had happened is Tanoy had been accused of balos, which is the Alangan way of killing someone through the spirits, through the demons. There are different ways to do that. I guess I don't need to tell you how. Anyway, may iba't ibang way na para patayin ang isang tao through the spirits. For the Alangan, that is really, 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 really bad. Like, that's one of the few things that they would consider a crime. Talagang krimen na yun para sa kanila. So they gathered a huge meeting. Malaki talagang meeting. And for the next 12, 24, 36 hours, tuloy yung kanilang meeting sa pag-aayos ng problem na ito. Pero hindi pa rin umaamin si Tanoy. He would not admit it. But everyone was convinced, kumbinsido talaga sila na si Tanoy ay mangbabalos. Nagbalos sa isang tao doon, sa kanilang sityo. But after 36 hours of meetings, they still could not come to a consensus. So finally what they did is they said, okay, we're going to give him dirt, make him eat a little pinch of dirt, along with may kasamang dasal, may kasamang like an incantation. And if he ever does it again, ang mga espiritu na mismo ang bahala sa kanya. The spirits will take care of it. And so that's what happened. Tanoy ate a little bit of dirt with the dasal, but he was addicted. He was addicted to balos. He couldn't stop. And so he tried to do another balos, and some of the other spirits killed him. And all of that was contained in the 3 words, he ate dirt. That is a high context culture. In a high context culture, it takes a long time to learn. It takes a long time to get into the culture and to understand all of these things, unlike low context cultures. So, my understanding is, ang karamihang pupuntahan ninyo kultura bilang mga missionary dito ay high context cultures. So be aware. Be aware. It will take time. Kailangan talagang sadyain ninyo na pag-aralan ang mga bagay na ito. It will take time to develop those relationships and friendships. Isa sa mga difference na nakita ko, forgive me, maybe forgive me also, Michael. But isa sa mga pagkakaiba between the Mangyan missionaries and the lowlander missionaries, even when they have this training, when they're culturally sensitive, when they are wala namang prejudice, they are working like this, pero there's still a difference in the level of relationships that they build. The Mangyan, when they arrive at a new place, a new village, they will put everything aside. And for weeks, they will just sit in people's houses and talk. And talk, and talk, and talk, and talk, and talk, and talk, and talk. And they will try to figure out all of the family relationships. At marami silang mga salita for different types of relationships. Marami silang mga, alam mo, sa atin, ama, ina, bayaw, lolo. Parang simple lang. Para sa kanila, marami pa. At all different degrees of relationships, they have words for all of those. And they will just sit there and figure out all of these interrelated relationships in the village or in the tribe. And who has power, who has influence, who owns this land, all these different things. They'll just sit there and talk and talk and talk and figure these things out. At kasama sa kanilang pag-uupo at pag-uusap, trabaho. They will go and work with them while they continue this process of learning and learning and learning and learning and learning. Pero hindi yung parang formal na every hour I go and I have class with someone. It's just being with the people. Whereas we tend to, especially ako, lalo pa ako bilang Amerikano, at least half American inside, ay kailangan ko ng parang personal time, personal space. So uwi ako sa aking bahay, parang mag-recharge, na mag-isa lang ako, introvert pa ako. Mag-recharge ako dun sa loob ng bahay, and then lalabas ako, dalaw konti, usap konti, language learning ng konti, and then balik naman sa bahay ko, ganon. But that will make your life much more difficult though, in high context cultures. It will be much more difficult to get in, to have the emotional and spiritual access. So narinig mo rin siguro, Michael, sa mga kwento ni Manuel. Grabe talaga ang kanyang time with the people. Like, totally babad talaga dun sa mga tao. All right. Even in the West, though, there are some examples of this. So can anybody tell me what this means? May isang CEO, president ng isang malaking corporation na may office, ganung klaseng office building nila. So, malaking corporation talaga ito. Okay, yung CEO, tinawag niya ang lahat ng mga department heads for a meeting in her office, doon sa penthouse, doon sa pinakataas ng building. Pagpasok ng mga department heads, yung isa, pagpasok niya, nakasuot pa rin ang kanyang sombrero, kanyang ball cap. And as he walked in, the CEO looked up and she said, "Hey, nice hat." Ano ang ibig sabihin ng president? Yeah. Uncourteous. Yes. Many people maybe here it's more. Many people up north, dito sa Pilipinas, hindi nila alam yon. Yeah, yung pagsusuot ng sombrero is just sombrero. So akala nila, pag sinabing nice hat, akala nila literal compliment doon sa lalaki na yon. Pero in our context, in our history at least, it's becoming less. Pero in our history, grabing disrespectful ang magsuot ng sombrero sa loob ng building, sa loob ng bahay or building. Kaya pag sinabing nice hat, it was sarcastic. It was actually a puna sa kanya. How about, even without words, can anybody tell me what this picture means? Well, my point here is that even in low context cultures, we still have things like this. We still have common things. Nobody knows what this means? It's a cassette tape. Bakit may lapis? Anong purpose ng lapis? Rewinding it. Yes, rewinding cassette tapes. And especially, I would always love to do this. You stick the pin in it and go like this, yeah? Although it's not good kasi mali yung tension kung ganun. Yep. Okay. So just a couple of examples there. Now, how do we learn culture and worldview? One of the things that you need to do to learn culture and worldview is, Michael and I have said it over and over again, well, yes, somebody said, you're right. Did you know that language is part of culture? And culture is part of language. If you try to learn the language na hindi pag-aralan din ang culture, you will never fully understand the language. Especially idiomatic parts of the language. Because it is so deeply tied into culture. If you try to learn the culture without learning the language, you also will never fully understand the language. Parang dalawang kabila ng isang piso. Okay? They're different shapes, different images, but they're both the same peso. You cannot properly learn either without the other. That's why yung class ko actually on this for AFM is called Lingua Cultura. It's all one thing together. You have to learn the language. Michael pointed out na kahit sa Biblia, may precedent tayo sa pag-aaral ng language. Ano ang wika ng Lumang Tipan? Lumang Tipan. Hebrew. Bakit Hebrew ang language ng Lumang Tipan? Someone said it. Because they were speaking Hebrew. God communicated to the Hebrews in Hebrew. All right? Now, what was the language of the New Testament? Greek. All right. Now, bonus question. There's a third language in the Bible. Does anybody know what that is? Aramaic. Yes. So, a portion of Daniel, a portion of Ezra, and then a few words of Jesus. Did you know, ano ang language ng Israel nung panahon ni Jesus? It was Aramaic. It was not Hebrew. It was Aramaic. So yung sabi ni Jesus, Eli Eli lama sabachthani, that was Aramaic. That's not Hebrew. Yeah. Okay. So God used the language of the people at that time. Now, how about Pentecost? Many languages. But why? There were many people there, but did those people know Greek? They knew Greek. They knew Greek. In our world today, if you're going to travel internationally, what language do you need to use? English. In their time, ang ganung language, ang tinatawag na lingua franca, ay Greek. So itong mga tao, nagbiyahe sila ng weeks or months across internationally para makarating sa Jerusalem. Tiyak na marunong sila mag-Grego. Pero God still worked one of the most amazing miracles para marinig nila sa sarili nilang heart language. Nung dumating kami sa mga mangyan, kagaya ng kwento ko kahapon, mga 6 months kami nag-aral ng Tagalog muna doon sa San Jose. And then, paglipat namin sa mga mangyan, because of AFM's teaching that we need to learn the language, nag-try kaming mag-aral ng lingwaheng mga mangyan. Para sa akin, hindi sobrang mahirap. Kasi laro-laro, just playing with the kids. But for my parents, it was really, really difficult. First of all, they grew up in an academic setting. So, sanay sila mag-aral through books, through grammar books, through exercises, mga ganon. Walang written materials. Like my dad literally reduced the language to writing. So walang materials, maliban kami mismo ang gumawa. We had to make any materials there were. And because of their fear and distrust of outsiders, ayaw nilang turuan kami. So after 6 months, especially yung mga parents ko, actually medyo mababa lang. 2 out of 5. 5 yung scale na ginagamit namin. Only 2 out of 5 yung alam nila sa Tagalog. So when my parents would ask them how to say this in Mangyan, they would actually teach them Tagalog. Pero hindi nila alam. They didn't realize that they were being taught Tagalog. Until later on, they would have to go, oh no, that's Tagalog. Hindi pala Mangyan yan. And they would have to try to shift in their mind, oh wait, that's not Mangyan, that's Tagalog. Try to put it in the Tagalog basket. And then relearn it again in Mangyan. Over and over and over and over. It was so difficult. It took 2 years to learn their language. And during that time, sumuko na yung mga magulang ko. They gave up. They said, kailangan ba talaga? Kasi, sa bundok, in the mountains, maaring hindi sila marunong mag-Tagalog. Pero here along the edge of the road, ngayon, magaling talaga sila. At that time, hindi gaano. Pero they could communicate. They could communicate. Siguro yung level ng Tagalog nila, almost the same as our level at that point. Maybe 2 plus. So sabi ng mga magulang ko, let's just use Tagalog. Wag na lang problemahin yung 2 years of learning to get the heart language. Until one day, my mom was called to treat an emergency patient. Pangalan ng dalaga na ito, si Bunswanan. Bunswanan was, dalaga na siya at that time, and she grew up in the lowlands. So, sanay na siya talaga mag-Tagalog. Probably of all the mangin at that time, siyang pinakamagaling mag-Tagalog. Pero, nung dumating yung nanay ko sa kanila, dahil sa sakit niya, she could no longer speak Tagalog. And so my mom had to use a translator in order to take a history and do an assessment. And my parents realized at that point, yes, they did know Tagalog, but it was parang nakapatong lang. Mababaw lang yung Tagalog. Yung underneath, yung underlying, yung deep heart language is Mangyan. So if they wanted, like the 3 levels here, culture, values, and then worldview, if we wanted to get to the worldview level and the gospel to change their heart, their way of thinking, hindi lang yung practices on top, pero yung underneath ay the same old system, then we needed to use the language of the heart. If we wanted to reach the heart, we needed to use the language of the heart. Culture and worldview study. Learn the language. Learn it. Take the time. For PFM missionaries, we are required to spend at least 20 hours per week language learning. At least 20 hours per week. At least 4 hours per day. Until we reach a level, a 2 plus on the LAMP scale. If you want any of the materials I have on language learning, the LAMP scale, how to language learn, etc., I can give them to you. But we take this very seriously. Talagang kailangan pag-aralan ang language. It's worth it. All right, moving on. I guess I did have this. I was going to say immerse. So really, really push yourself. When we first moved back from San Jose, balik kami sa mga mangyan, as a kid, kahit ngayon, talagang mahihain ako. Sabi ng iba, hindi totoo, pero ano lang yun. Natuto lang ako parang pilitin ang sarili. Pero sa totoo, mahihain talaga ako. So I would just stay in the house after school and read National Geographic. Hindi ako talaga lumalabas. Until my parents pushed me and pushed me and pushed me, you have to go out, you have to go out. Ay, hindi naman ako marunong. Mahiya ako, hindi ko lang kung anong sasabihin ko. They pushed me and pushed me. Finally, I still remember, it was so traumatic, na talagang naglakad ako across the village, dun sa unang bahay. Grabing na pinapawisan talaga ako. Climbed up the ladder, sat down in their hut, and all the women, kasi mga lalaki, nagtrabaho na, all the women were there in the house. And I just sat there, awkward. And they sat there, awkward. And the other women over there, they sat there, awkward. Opo lang kami ng opo. I didn't know how to say anything. They tried to ask me questions and I couldn't understand. I tried to answer them, they couldn't understand. We kind of pointed at things and smiled and laughed. Yeah. But you know, they loved it. They loved it. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of what has now ended up with me being a part of their tribe now. I've married into the tribe. They've given me land in the tribe. Talagang part ako ng tribu nila ngayon. It takes just kahit awkward, kahit strange, kahit nakakapagod, spend huge amounts of time with them. Our people in, like Michael, that are working in the Cordillera region have a harder time doing this. Kasi going to more low context, yung culture. Pero it's a real blessing when you're working with tribal people, because you can do this. You can do this. Spend huge amounts of time with them. Work with them, live with them. Actually, isa sa mga recommended naming exercises is I would recommend doing this a lot. Pero at least, take a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times, na meron kang kaibigan, and then you will make an appointment to spend 24 hours with them, all day long, all night long. Everything that your friend does, you do with them too. So, pagpunta sa kaingin, pagigib, luto sa bahay nila, tulog dun sa bahay nila, everything they do it with them. Do it like them. Okay? And then document everything that you learn during that time. The next is lumilitaw ang mga mas malalim na aspeto ng kanilang culture in major life events and ceremonies. What are some major life events and ceremonies? Weddings, yes. What are some others? Funerals. Graduation. Birthdays, if they have birthdays. Yeah. People ask my wife how old she is. We don't know. She has a birth certificate, but it's not real. So my daughter always teases her. Every year we celebrate her birthday, and every year my daughter says, "You know, Mom, sometime this last year your birthday went by, but we never knew it." Yeah. Kasi hindi namin alam yung totoong birthday. Okay, some others. Come now. Parang puro mga Western events yung tokoy ninyo. Ano yung mga more native? Harvest time, yes. Performing rituals for what? But what kind of rituals might they do? Yeah, before opening a kaingin. Planting time. When people are sick. What do they do when people are sick? What are other major crises in people's lives? Death. Yep. And by the way, for many native tribes, ceremonies around death is not just at the point of death. It can go on for days, weeks, some places even years. Yeah, for the mangyan originally, sometimes they would have a bansag or some of the other ceremonies like a year and a half after the person died. Yeah. All right. Any others? Solving problems? Yes. Yes. Disciplinary problems, conflict, absolutely. Okay. So, observe these things as much as possible. Pero remember, isa sa talagang malimit na katisura ng missionary in language and culture study is they only observe the external. And they don't get deeper as to why. I've tried to teach my daughter all her life to always ask why. You can ask other people why, but ask yourself why. Try to get deeper, understand why. Now, yung logic nila, malimit, ang logic system nila ay iba kaysa sa logic system natin. So, don't be discouraged and don't disrespect them kung hindi logical sa iyo, yung kanilang ginagawa. Just give you an example. One of my friends, let me get the story right here. One of my friends, meron siyang kaibigang katutubo in Papua New Guinea. And in the middle of the night, a snake came up into their house and bit, either bit him or bit his wife. I don't remember which one. Anyway, came up and bit someone in the family. And, everyone was upset and whatnot. And for them, they were trying to figure out the reason why the snake came and bit them. Like, para sa akin bilang Amerikano, the snake just came into the house. But for them, there was a reason. There had to be a reason why. And they finally had I think if I remember right, they had a meeting. And they finally concluded why the snake bit the man. And so my friend went and talked to him and he said, so why? Why did the snake bite you? And he said, oh, because I saw his yung dumi niya. I saw his poop in the jungle. Now, where did you see this? Oh, I was like, I don't know, like 1 or 2 days hike over that direction when I saw this. So what connection does that have with coming into your house? Well, yeah, I saw it. So how did the snake know where you lived? Well, his makati yung puwit niya. Like the snake's rear end was itchy. Huh? Okay, so parang hindi logical sa atin. Pero for them, for them it does make total sense. And here's why. For them, any part of your body is always part of your body. It's spiritually part of you. So that's why, have you noticed that in many cultures, if you want to put a curse on somebody, you need something from their body. You can take a piece of hair, like for the mangyan. I said I wasn't going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. So one of the ways you can kill someone on the mangyan, I'm not going to tell you exactly how, but is take a piece, if you can get a piece of their hair, tapos ilagay mo yun dun sa apak, like a footprint. Yep, and burn it there, and then there are certain things you do that I won't explain. Yep. So as the snake pooped in the jungle, and Dale saw that poop, Dale's friend saw the poop, looked at it, and parang disrespectful sa ahas. Kaya kumati yung kanyang. Yep. And then he went and found the person who had seen it and disrespected him, at pumunta doon at kumagat sa kanya. Okay. So it can be very illogical to us, but for them, it is logical. And that is actually a deeper practice, to understand the logic of why. Okay, and that will help you understand who they are. Where are we? Immerse. All right. Learn as many learn their stories and their legends. And this is fun. Hindi naman parang mabigat na assignment ito. It's fun to listen to stories, right? They can be weird and fantastic stories. It may be a little bit difficult to understand at first, pero it's fun. It's interesting. Yeah. By the way, tip lang ito, when you are telling stories to them, many times you will find na hindi nila maintindihan ang inyong kwento. Or hindi sila nasasabik sa iyong kwento. Parang hindi interesting sa kanila. Because just the way we think, kahit parang nakibagay tayo sa kanila, the way we think is still so much differently fundamentally at the logic level that they have a hard time relating. So here's the hint. Use your legends. Use the legends from other places. You can use like Grimm's fairy tales. I don't know if any of you have heard Grimm's fairy tales. What are some of those? Like yung nanay na nakatira sa sapatos, or yung pato na maitim na naging puti. You've never heard of these stories? Different stories, yeah. Anyway. But yes, pwede rin yung alamat. Tama ba sa Tagalog? Alamat? Yeah. So our legends, our myths also usually translate well. Odyssey. Has anybody heard of Homer's Odyssey? I was amazed. I started telling Homer's Odyssey, and the whole village got together. And they were like hanging on every word. They loved the Odyssey. Yeah, so you can use these stories also to teach. All right. Oh, and then gaya ng binanggit ko kahapon, especially take note of anything you don't understand that just doesn't make sense to you or nakakainis. Especially kung nakakainis. That's actually good. Good news yan. Because that is a clue. It's really, really hard to find the worldview. This is a clue that you're running up to a worldview difference between you and them. So that is something that you need to study deeper. Huwag mong i-write off sila, huwag mong, bahala na sila ganun. Hindi. That's a clue for you to dig deeper and to study harder and to understand. Okay? There will be certain people na willing, na mas maintindihan nila ang sarili nila. Many of them never actually think about themselves. Like, we oftentimes don't really think about ourselves at the deeper levels either. But there are people that are kind of their philosophers, na mas iniisip nila talaga yung mga malalim sa kanilang culture. Maaring hindi nila lubos na intindihan. They probably still don't get it at the worldview level. But those are the people now willing and able to help you look deeper. At hindi sila frustrated kung magtanong ka ng magtanong. Basta respectful yung tanong. Okay. Pero yung iban, parang naiinis sila after 2 or 3 questions, ayaw na nila. Tama na. Yeah. So those are the people that can be your guides. Now, don't forget, you have to take all of these things and do what with them? You have to think about them. You have to analyze them. You have to collate them, put them together, and understand why they think the things they do. Hindi lang kung ano ang iniisip nila, pero kung bakit. Bakit ganun ang mga iniisip nila. Repeated themes. Dito sa mga legends, I forgot to say this. Dito sa mga stories and legends, especially tandaan ninyo yung mga themes and patterns. The things that repeat over and over again, hindi lang yung elements. Like, hindi lang like para sa mga mangyan, yung unggoy, lagi siya ang kaaway. Lagi siya ang naghuhusig. The persecutor is always the monkey. And the hero is always the rabbit. And so Hare used that. He called himself the rabbit. They called him Dr. Rabbit. Okay, for them, pagong. But that is, medyo mababaw lang yun. That's not what I mean by repeating themes. What I mean is the repetition, for example, that in almost all Mangyan legends, there's always a persecutor persecuting the hero, and the hero wins, and usually kind of turns the tables, parang ibaliktad niya yung persecution on the persecutor sa pamamagitan ng pagiging mautak and spiritual power. Yung dalawa na yun. That's a very common theme. Okay. So that is getting down towards the worldview level. Does everyone have this? No need to Pwede nang burahin. This is my old worldview. Before I became a Christian, even if I grew up in Adventism, there still was a time that I really wasn't. Like it was something I grew up in, pero hindi akin talaga yon. Okay, so this is my old worldview. Your worldview creates your values and culture. This culture is a result of this worldview. For the mangin, these things happened in our past. Itong mga nangyari sa aking past, kaya ngayon, ganito kami. They grew up in a jungle. They grew up where there was always food. It was always hot. They grew up kung saan laging sila hinuhusig. They were always taken advantage of. They never met an outsider that didn't take advantage of them. That understanding of the world developed a culture where they're very reclusive, very not introverted, extroverted talaga sila, pero within their own tribe. Very, anong tawag dyan? Defensive, very much definitely, very defensive. And also the whole idea of yung just kind of go with it, go with the flow to get rid of the outsiders, okay? So that's a cultural aspect that was driven by the worldview resulting from their history. So this is my old worldview, which creates my culture. What is my job as a Christian? Hindi yung job ko sa labas. Ang ibig kong sabihin in my own life. What is the work that I need to do as a Christian in my life? Do I need to just change my culture? Do I need to just start going to church on Sabbath? And stop eating pork? And what else? Pay tithe, for sure. Always pay tithe. And a double offering. Yeah. If I do these things, if I do these things, then I can keep my old worldview. Tama ba yun? What results if I do that? What is the result if I do that? It becomes meaningless. It becomes a form. Someone said in the prayer, a form of godliness, but denying the power. Okay? It also causes something like that. Syncretism. Syncretism is when you are an Adventist going to church, but you sacrifice a chicken because someone is seeing ghosts in the church. This is when you are an Adventist and you go to the doctor and you also go to the albulario, the witch doctor, the shaman. That is syncretism. Now, if we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about different types of syncretism and different reasons for syncretism. But we can kind of generalize and say, syncretism results from, hindi nagbago yung worldview ko, yung inside, tinatry ko lang baguhin yung outside. Pero yung pananaw ko sa mundo is the same as it was before. All right? So, my job as a Christian is not just to change my culture. My work in my own life, Paul says, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. What is that? That is to change my worldview into a biblical worldview. Yung pananaw sa mundo na meron kay Kristo. To look at at the realities around me from the same way that Jesus looks at them. To understand what those spirits really are. To understand who God is in relation to those spirits. To understand who I am in relation to those spirits, and in relation to God, and in relation to the world, and in relation to my fellow people. Then what kind of a culture will I have? Will I have a biblical culture? Will I wear long robes? And will I sing the kinds of songs that we heard on the video yesterday? Different. It is a culture of love. It is a culture of love, but it's a culture of love in my cultural context. Okay? So my job is to work from here to here. I need to actively be working on changing yung sarili kong worldview, pananaw sa mundo, to become like Jesus' worldview. And then figure out how to live out. Paano isabuhay ko ang ganung worldview in my situation, in my context. That's contextualization. Hindi sa context ng Amerikano, hindi sa context ng Chinese, sa context ng, this context here. The biblical worldview in the context of Mindanao, in the context of Visayas, in the context of Manobo, if you're a Manobo, whatever your own cultural context is. Now, kumpleto na ba ang proseso na ito? Has anybody fully finished this yet in this room? I'd like to know, because I would like to learn from you. Yeah. Of course, hindi pa talaga tapos ito. We have not yet finished fully changed our worldview into a biblical worldview. At sigurado, malaking problema nga sa Adventist Church is we tend to have a culture that is split. Split. Like in the rest of our life, we're Filipino. And in the Adventist Church, we're Americans from the 1900s. Yeah, okay? So we're still working this out ourselves. In process pa rin ito. Okay? We're all here trying to improve that, work on that. And also because now, as somebody in process still, I now am going to go to, I think I finally used it up. Now, as somebody who has not yet completed, hindi pa tapos, kompleto itong process, pupunta ako bilang isang missionary sa tribong Manobo. Okay. So we have a Manobo worldview. An old Manobo worldview. Which results in a Manobo culture. And then we need to now help the Manobo to have a worldview. Now, do I fully understand? Sa sarili kong buhay, lubos kong naintindihan ang biblical worldview. I'm still working on it myself. And now, I'm going to try to tell somebody else how to do it. Pero hindi ko pa lubos naintindihan sa sarili ko kung paano gawin ito. And I'm still a little bit confused about how to make a Filipino or a Bisaya, how would I say this? A Bisaya Adventist culture. A Bisaya version of the expression of this worldview. And now I'm going to the Manobo. And I'm going to try to help them have not only a biblical worldview, but I'm going to try to help them i-facilitate ko yung kanilang contextualization, which means to make a Manobo version of how to live out the biblical worldview. Is this an easy process? No. Is this a process na lubos natin naintindihan? No. So, to a certain extent, ipatawad ninyong sarili ninyo. It's not going to be just a simple, you just go there and do this.
Not as simple as 1 plus 1.
Yeah, it's not just a 1 plus 1 kind of thing. Tayo mismo, actually, we will learn more how to do this, actually, as we do it with someone else. Kasi usually, hindi nga natin nakakita ang sarili nating worldview. We don't even realize. Part of this class is to help you understand na ang iyong culture is not necessarily the right culture. It's not necessarily the wrong culture either. Pero this is my best attempt at the moment sa aking stage of development to apply a biblical worldview sa Visayan culture. And you need to give them the same freedom to learn and to do that process as well. And you need to be intentional na huwag gawin silang mga Bisayang Adventist. Huwag gawin silang mga American Adventist. Help them to discover how to be Manubo Adventist. And it's probably going to have some things na uncomfortable sa iyo. Never, never, never breaking biblical principles. Hindi iyan ang tukoy natin dito. Pero it may break my culture. It may break my Visayan Adventist culture. They may pray with their eyes open. They may not kneel. They may lay flat on the ground. I don't know. Sa Biblia, bawal ba ang magpadapa habang nananalangin? But if we did that in this church yesterday, or Sabbath, talagang may magtaka. Baka offshoot na ito. Okay? So even if we just wear skirts and eat vegetarian food, we're sometimes called offshoots. Paano pa kung nakadapa tayo habang nananalangin? Right? So it also is going to be a little bit challenging to balance this with yung mga behind us na hindi lubos na intindihan nila ito. So we need to be gracious to them as well. Gracious and yet at the same time helping them na lumago rin at maintindihan din nila ito. All right. That is what I have for now about culture and worldview. Tanong dagdag kontra.
Question.
Yeah.
Is it right to make some favorite stories of fellowship?
Excuse me. Tanong ko pa sa iyo, did Jesus make any stories? Yes. Some of the stories na sabi ni Jesus ay actual events. Like yung Good Samaritan, that actually happened. That was a historical event. Pero yung rich man and Lazarus, that was a Jewish legend. Kaya nga, tayo, inisip natin yung state of the dead. Pero para kay Jesus, para sa mga Jews, that was not the point of the story. Hindi yun ang dahilan. It was about whether rich people were blessed of God and poor people were cursed of God. Okay, so Jesus used that legend kasi it made the point very well about rich people versus poor people. It wasn't about the state of the dead. So yes, the parable of the sower, some of these others. Now, actually, meron ba siyang na-observe? Yeah, I mean, we all see people sowing. We all see people humahasik, nagahasik, mga ganun. But Jesus put that together, not necessarily from an actual historical event. Pero sa karanasan niya lang na ganun ang mga hasik. Yung parable of the lost sheep, yung parable of the lost coin, yung tatlong losts doon, walang evidence doon at walang historical evidence na actually those were specific historical events, but they're common things that happen. Everyone loses things sometimes in the house. Mga ganun. So para sa akin, it's appropriate. Basta, in harmony with biblical principles.
Okay. That's what I mean.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're talking about sharing to them also the Odyssey.
That was not in the context of church. Yeah. Nagkwentuhan lang kami doon sa kaingin. Yeah. But there may be something I could pull out from one aspect of the Odyssey. Hindi ko pa naisip yan ng husto. But that wasn't in the context of religious teaching at all. Yeah. Naalala ko lang na talagang sabik na sabik sila doon sa kwento niyan. Yeah.
So, when did you share Odyssey or other things? What was your impression of it?
When I was telling the Odyssey, we were just up in the mountains, working in the Kaing in the mountain farm, lunch break, and I was just telling stories. Everyone was telling stories. It wasn't a religious context. I wasn't trying to pull out a religious or a spiritual meaning to that. Yeah.
Reading books, I read the story about it.
Yeah. I intentionally tried to develop an identity of a trainer and a storyteller. A trainer and a storyteller. So when other people did other things, and people tried to compare me, bakit siya, gumagawa ng CR, gumagawa ng simbahan, gumagawa ng ganito, gumagawa ng ganon, nag-gift giving, nag-feeding. That's great. That's wonderful. Salamat sa kanyang tulong. Ang akin naman is to train you how to be a healthcare worker. To train you how to be a teacher. To train you to iba-ibang mga